Persecution reaches a fever pitch in what's being called the Christian murder capital of the world.
Where are media outlets claiming it's not happening, and how is the U.S. responding?
You have a government that is not doing nearly enough to protect those Christians. This legislation is designed to change that.
I'm Georgia Howe with Daily Wire Executive Editor John Bickley. It's Thursday, October 23rd, and this is Morning Wire. Russia ratchets up its saber-rattling, staging a nuclear drill as a peace summit between Trump and Putin is put on hold.
We canceled the meeting with President Putin. It didn't feel right to me, but we'll do it in the future.
And as attacks on ICE continue to skyrocket, an illegal immigrant is arrested for allegedly ramming an ICE vehicle while trying to escape. Thanks for waking up with Morning Wire. Stay tuned. We have the news you need to know.
Fall is here, and with it comes cooler nights, heartier meals, and the craving for something warm and satisfying. That's where HelloFresh comes in, bringing you comforting, chef-designed recipes and fresh, seasonal ingredients right to your door. HelloFresh has really stepped up their game. They've doubled their menu to around 100 weekly options with seasonal dishes and international recipes, plus bigger portions that actually fill everyone up. They're focusing on high-protein meals with veggie-packed recipes that include at least 2 different vegetables per dish, making it easier to eat greener without even trying. I'm really digging the different variety of taco recipes. As always, they taste incredible, and they're super easy to prep. But what really caught my attention is how they're now including steak and seafood recipes at no extra cost. It's like having a diverse restaurant menu delivered right to your door. The best way to cook just got better. Head over to HelloFresh.com/MorningWire10FM now to get 10 free meals plus a free item for life. 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discounts on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's HelloFresh.com/MorningWire10FM to get 10 free meals plus a free item for life.
It is specifically religious persecution. They're going after them because they're Christian, and that is unacceptable, and I think we need to stand up and fight back at it.
That was Senator Ted Cruz calling out the Christian genocide in Nigeria. The violence has claimed thousands of lives this year alone, but human rights advocates say the Nigerian government has turned a blind eye.
Here with more is Daily Wire culture reporter Megan Basham. So, Megan, for people who haven't been following this story, can you summarize what's been happening to Christians in Nigeria?
Yeah, so it's devastating, Georgia. The numbers, as many as 7,000 Christians killed since the beginning of this year alone, in Nigeria alone. And in some cases, advocacy groups are saying as a result of these Islamic attacks, some Christian villages and communities are being entirely burned to the ground. Now, this has been going on somewhat for the last decade, and it's kind of flown under the radar. The U.S. government has not paid much attention. We're starting to see that change now. In particular, Senator Cruz and Representatives Nancy Mace are calling for Nigeria to be reclassified as a country of particular concern for religious persecution.
Many in the media share the same woke mindset that they will not call out radical Islamic terrorism for what it is, especially when it's Christians who are the victims. And so it takes the rest of us to highlight this needs to end.
I also spoke with Judd Saul, who is the founder of Equipping the Persecuted. That's a group on the ground in Nigeria that's trying to minister to these Christians that are being persecuted and attacked. And he said that this crisis has been building for a decade as more and more Muslims and Islamic groups are moving into Nigeria and into these Christian areas.
But what they have done is they move in, they populate, and once they gain population, they start taking political control. And once they gain political control, the killing starts.
And what I really want to emphasize for you, Georgia, is that so often the Christians that are being killed here are the elderly, they're women, they're children, essentially people who are unable to easily flee when they know that the violence is coming.
So if this violence has been so widespread and it's been going on for years, why have we not heard more about it from the mainstream press?
Yeah, that's one of Judd Saul's biggest frustrations. He says that the Nigerian government essentially controls what gets reported, and Western outlets too often will repeat the official denials of the government without getting out on the ground to record or document what's happening there themselves.
The mainstream media never shows up to Nigeria. What they do is they take the Nigerian government's word for it. Every time there's an attack, every time Christians are killed, it's always these unknown gunmen. It's always these bandits.
But now what's happening is footage is emerging of burned churches, mass graves, displaced families living in tarps or under tents where they have no food, water, or medicine.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the U.S. government is starting to take notice. What kind of response are we seeing?
Well, one major effort that we're seeing from Senator Ted Cruz is the Nigerian Religious Freedom Accountability Act of 2025. He introduced that just this month. And what it will do is impose sanctions on Nigerian officials who are accused of facilitating violence against Christians or any other religious minorities.
We also have 12 states in Nigeria and the federal government in Nigeria that have in place blasphemy laws and Sharia laws. And those blasphemy and Sharia laws are a tool that is frequently used to oppress Christians as well.
And what about the Nigerian government? Are they responding in any way?
Yeah, the Nigerian government is continuing to deny that these killings are the result of religious persecution. What they say is that this violence is simply clashes between herders and farmers. But a lot of international watchdog groups are simply saying that that is a false narrative. Saul says that the Nigerian military has repeatedly failed to respond to advance warnings of attacks. So it's because of this kind of inaction that many Nigerian Christians are now looking to the U.S. government, hoping that America's influence on the international stage will turn a spotlight on what they've been experiencing.
Well, an extremely troubling story. I'm glad we're covering it. Megan, thanks for reporting.
Yes, thank you.
This episode is brought to you by American Beverage, representing the local and many family-owned bottlers and distributors of Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, and Pepsi products operating in all 50 states. These are drinks we've all loved for generations. These iconic brands are part of the American story and have been for over 100 years. With all the talks about American jobs lately, American beverage companies have been delivering on that promise all along. They always have been and always will be American companies making American products with American workers in American hometowns. 275,000 men and women in all 50 states show up every day, do the work, and deliver for our economy and our communities. Learn more about America's beverage companies at wedeliverforamerica.org.
President Trump canceled a second summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and hours later, a fresh barrage of Russian missiles rained down on Ukraine, killing 7.
Daily Wire reporter Tim Pierce is here to talk about the latest in Trump's efforts to end the war in Ukraine. So, Tim, there were some hopeful signs as of last week, but maybe that was premature. What's going on in Ukraine?
That's right. Moscow just doesn't appear to want to end the war. And as John noted, Russia recently launched another major missile and drone strike against Ukraine that killed 7 people. It was designed to be part of Russia's campaign to knock out Ukraine's energy infrastructure ahead of winter. But according to the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. has given Ukraine the green light to launch its own attacks deep inside Russian territory. Now, Trump has denied that report, but on Tuesday, Ukraine used a British Storm Shadow cruise missile to hit a plant in Bryansk, Russia. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also announced yesterday a substantial pickup in sanctions against Russia. All this came as Trump backed out of a second peace summit with Putin. This one was supposed to be held in Budapest, Hungary. Zelensky had doubts about it, but he was prepared to join as long as Trump was there to mediate between the two sides. But the White House canceled the summit after a phone call between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Here's Trump explaining Tuesday why he backed out of that summit.
No, I don't want to have a wasted meeting. I don't want to have a waste of time, so I'll see what happens.
While this certainly deflates some of the optimism from earlier in the week, some foreign policy experts say this was a necessary move by Trump. It's a recognition that Putin just doesn't feel enough pressure yet for peace talks to mean much of anything yet.
So what sort of deals are on the table right now?
Well, Trump said this week that the battle lines should be frozen right where they are as a precondition to peace talks. And that's been the position of Europe as well, and it has support from Zelensky. Here he was after landing in Oslo, Norway.
After our conversation, you saw messages, public messages from Trump. He proposed stay where we stay and begin conversation. I think that was good compromise, but I'm not sure that Putin will support it. And I said it to the president.
The Ukrainian president continued to press his case for Tomahawk missiles after his disappointing meeting at the White House last week. Zelensky said in a post on X, quote, Russia continues to do everything to weasel out of a ceasefire, and that, quote, as soon as the issue of long-range capabilities for Ukraine became less immediate, Moscow's interest in diplomacy faded. This signals that deep strike capabilities may hold the key to peace.
Now, pivoting a bit, the Trump administration has also been brokering a peace deal between Israel and Hamas. Vice President Vance was in Israel working on that just this week. What came of that meeting?
Well, the visit first and foremost signaled the Trump administration's investment in these ongoing peace negotiations and Trump's 20-point plan for peace in the Middle East. Now, there's only so much that can be done at this stage regarding Hamas's refusal to disarm. Here's the vice president talking about that.
You basically have two regions in Gaza, one of which is relatively safe and one of which is incredibly dangerous. And part of ensuring that we get to a durable peace is to broaden the scope of the area that's safe. And the International Security Force is a big part of that. We don't yet have the International Security Force set up. That's something we're working towards.
He was also critical of media coverage of the Gaza ceasefire as well.
There's almost this desire to root for failure, that every time something bad happens, that every time that there's an act of violence, there's this inclination to say, oh, this is the end of the ceasefire. This is the end of the peace plan. It's not the end. It is, in fact, exactly how this is going to have to happen when you have people who hate each other, who have been fighting against each other for a very long time. We are doing very well.
So a lot of questions still up in the air about the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, but the White House really showing that it is invested in securing a durable peace in the Middle East.
Well, that would be a major accomplishment if they can land that plane. Tim, thanks for reporting.
Good to be on.
An illegal immigrant was shot by federal authorities in Los Angeles after he tried to evade arrest for a second time and allegedly rammed a federal vehicle. The illegal immigrant behind the attack is a well-known TikToker who regularly exposes ICE operations online.
Joining us now to discuss is Daily Wire immigration reporter Jenny Terr. Hey, Jenny. So what do we know about what led up to this shooting?
He was previously wrapped up in an ICE raid when he was apparently trying to impede on their operations. Now he's since been identified. His name is Carlitos Ricardo Parias. He's an illegal immigrant from Mexico. At the time, the officers had handcuffed him and they were trying to load him into their vehicle when outside agitators actually scooped him up and brought them into a car and drove him away, apparently to a nearby hospital. So this is something that was shown in a separate TikTok from his account that sources shared with me. He was involved again in trying to impede an ICE operation this week. He tried to ram the vehicle of the ICE officers. And because of that, those officers chose to fire defensive shots at him. He was shot and a ricochet bullet also hit a U.S. Marshal. Both were taken to the hospital and are expected to be okay. But he's notorious for these types of actions. At the same time, we learned that he was actually recognized by the Los Angeles City Council recently for his efforts in exposing ICE. They even said on the award that it was for his, quote, tireless efforts to safeguard our neighborhoods from illegal raids. So he's known as this kind of individual that goes on TikTok, that posts about this to his over 100,000 followers, and also apparently is now wrapped up with the law.
All right, so here we have a known activist, had a prior incident, and then he was awarded by the city for his past actions. Do we know if the Trump administration is doing anything to stop this?
They're really trying to throw the law at him when it comes to any charges they can carry out against him, in addition to immigration violations. So the U.S. Attorney in California, Bill Asaley, has also hit him with charges for assaulting a law enforcement officer. And having those two consecutive cases will really ensure that he is removed from the United States, because no matter whose custody he's in, he will eventually end up in ICE custody, where the goal will be to remove him from the United States.
Now, on the other side of the country in New York City, we're hearing about a major ICE operation that took place on the infamous Canal Street on Tuesday. Can you tell us what exactly occurred there?
Right. So Canal Street is an area that is known for the sale of counterfeit goods, drug markets, all kinds of illicit activity. ICE has done operations in this area for a while, but because there's so much scrutiny on the Trump administration right now, you're seeing a lot of attention towards this issue, this raid that happened, that even drew a mob of rioters. So there were 9 arrests of mostly illegal immigrants from Africa. 5 of them actually were led into the United States by the Biden administration, and they have pretty egregious rap sheets for things like forgery, for drug trafficking, for assaults. And the reason that these individuals were out on the streets, despite having already been wrapped up with the law, is because of the sanctuary laws that have protected them. So we actually spoke with the head of the ICE office in New York, and this is what he said about the issue.
The residents and the business owners, about them being in front of the area. You have the regular public that sometimes interacts with them, complains because they get harassed by them. So it's something that NYPD has done quality of life operations on, which is great. The only issue is with the sanctuary status here in New York City. Once NYPD arrests them, either due to bail reform or the sanctuary policies, they are released back into the community. They're never turned back over. They're never called. ICE is never called. So we don't know about it, and we have to then try and find them and research them. And like I said, being a transient population, moving around, it's tough to pinpoint exactly where they might be at that time. But we had an intelligence-driven op for this one with many leads in this area.
Well, as usual, a lot going on the immigration front. Jenny, thank you so much for reporting on this for us.
Thank you.
Thanks for waking up with us. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be back this evening with more news you need to know.